Welcome to the Sisters-in-Laws podcast, a faith-based podcast that spotlights Black women that replace silence with storytelling around pregnancy and infant loss and infertility. Black women experience miscarriage and stillbirth 4 to 5 times more likely than white women in the United States, according to the CDC and NIH. Whether you've experienced a miscarriage, infant loss, or stillbirth, are trying to conceive, or have an infertility diagnosis, you will learn about resources and strategies to heal, gain clarity, peace, and hope, and find an empowering path forward after loss. I'm your host, Erica M. Freeman, and you'll hear me interview other sisters-in-laws from around the world who have healed from such a painful and traumatic experience by sharing their testimonies and stories to inspire and help others turn their pain into their purpose. Storytelling is powerful. Storytelling is activism. Storytelling is healing. Now let's get started. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I'm excited that you're here. I would love for you to just share a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yes, so my name is Shana-Lee Scott, and I am an author, as well as just I always say that I'm a child of God, as well as just being a wife and a sister and a daughter and just a friend. And I never meet a stranger. My husband always tells me that. So I always just love just simply embracing in people. I know that sounds so cliche but I really do genuinely like people because I love hearing about people's stories. So that's about me. I reside in the Dallas-Fort Worth area in Texas, but I was born in Jamaica, but grew up in South Florida, in West Palm Beach, Florida. So, but I've been here since in Dallas-Fort Worth area since 2008. So it's been a good minute. So yeah.
Oh, that's good. Good. I always tell people that Texas is so different from the cities. I know people who've never been to Texas. I lived in Texas outside of college in Beaumont,
Oh,
about an
okay.
hour east of Houston. And people you like, oh, you live near Houston, even Beaumont and Triangle and that's all. Port Arthur, all that's still different than Houston,
Different than
which is
Houston,
still
yeah.
different than Dallas and the suburbs of Dallas, which is still different than Austin.
Exactly.
It's like so many parts of Texas is so, and I don't think people really grasp how big Texas is.
Yeah,
And that's why it's just so different. And it's almost like different pockets of Texas. So it's good. Good that you're
yeah,
there. You've been there. You've seen the evolution because Dallas in
yeah.
2008 is different than Dallas now.
Exactly. I drive by places and I'm like, oh my God, it's like I can't believe this is here. This is all new. So yeah, it definitely has changed so much.
Oh, so much. Well, you have a story to tell, and I would love for you to just take us back on your journey to motherhood and share with us your story.
Yes. So, um, in 2017, I we got married. My husband and I, we got married, and I was, just like, okay, now I'm ready to have children and all the great things. And so I set up, my appointment with my OBGYN because prior to getting married, I did know I had fibroids, and when I first got diagnosed with fibroids, it was more so like it was one, and it was like a golf ball size, and I was like, okay, and at the time I didn't have a husband and have a prospect or anything, so I was just like, okay, my OBGYN like, well, we can wait on it and see what transpires. And so now in 2017 we got married. I'm like, okay, I know I got fibroids. Let me just go and I've always heard just, doing the surgery. So I was like, yeah, that's what's gonna happen. So made the appointment. And when she called me in, I'm thinking we're gonna talk about the whole appointment and or the surgery and going about it. And she brought me back, and she did it in the hallway because I don't think she it's interesting sometimes when it comes to the medical staff and just how and their treatment. And so she did it in the hallway and she was like, you have a lot of fibroids and I'm recommending a hysterectomy. And I was like, what? Hold on, wait a minute. That time out, that wasn't what I was thinking we were going to go down the road or go down that path and everything. And she saw my tears start, she saw my eyes start tearing up. And so she brought me back to her office and she was like, yeah, you have multiple. And I was like, and at the time I didn't even realize that it I grew that had so many multiples. And so I was like, okay. And then I was asking her, well, is there any way that I could just do, just natural way of like trying to reduce it or anything? And she was like, no. She was like, I just recommend a hysterectomy. And so I left her office and I was just starting to boohoo cry. Like, I cried all the way home and I wear glasses and it was raining that day. And because I remember like it was like yesterday. And I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, my glasses fogging up, it's raining, like, and just cried all the way home. And then when I got to the street where we lived on at the time, and to turn, I don't even know what was on the radio the entire drive, but at that moment, it stopped raining and the radio DJ came on and said, "I don't know who this is for, but I just feel to tell you that if you believe." Then pray and trust God that it will happen. And I was like, I don't know, Lord, if that's a sign or what, because it like the sun came out or what. And I was just like, okay. And so I got home. I was still boohoo crying. And when my husband came home, I told him what she said. And he was like, well, hold on. He was like, no, she doesn't have the final say. God has the final say. And he's like, we're going to get a second opinion. He was like, he's like, doctors have said things in the past with my family members and they're wrong and everything. So he's like, we're going to get a second opinion. And I said, okay. So went and got a second opinion and everything. And that doctor was like, yeah, you do have multiples. But I'm not recommending hysterectomy, but if I do the surgery, there is a chance of a hysterectomy because of how many that you have. And I said, okay. And so I didn't feel comfortable with that recommendation because I was like, if we're going in with that thought process, I don't feel comfortable with you cutting me open. So then I went to another doctor. And at first I was like thinking, like, am I just shopping around for the answer? But I was like, no, it was just something in me that was like, no, it's like I couldn't let it go. And so I went to the other doctor um and so she was like, well, yeah, I could do the surgery. Spacey said the same thing as the previous doctor that if we do the surgery, the chances are of the hysterectomy. And so in the meantime, my sister, and of course I told my sister and my mom and shared with them everything. And my sister is a nurse down in Florida. And I remember driving one day to church and she was like, she called me and she was like, I just been thinking, I think you need to come here and talk with Dr. Charles. And she's like, he's a doctor that's well known in the area and he has helped many women who have fibroids and remove them and it's been successful and have had babies from it. And I was like, well, wait a minute. I'm in Texas, Josh in Texas. And she was like, well, after the surgery, you're gonna need help. And she was like, it's just you and Josh. And Josh is my husband. It's just you and Josh. So and at the time my mom is retired and so she was like, mom will be able to help you and everything. And so I said, okay, well, I also have to think about like the insurance piece because I'm in Texas. How does that translate to Florida? And so she was like, we'll figure all that out. You just, talk it over with Josh. So I talked it over. And at that time, I was heading actually to church because my church had like this prayer night on Wednesday nights, and I sat in the back, and I just was there kind of thing, and just sometimes when you're just in a place just to be there, and then from there one of the ladies that attended my church when it was over, she was like, "Oh, I didn't know you were here, Shana-Lee. She's like, the Lord gave me a word for you." And when she gave me, and she had it like written down, and she handed it to me. And she was like, because I didn't know you were here. So I like wrote it down. So when I see you, and when I opened it up and I read it, it was Mark 11:24, which was the same scripture verse the radio DJ was quoting when I was driving. So I was like, oh my goodness, like what's the chances of the same scripture verse? And so I talked it over with my husband and we were like, okay, we're gonna go and we're gonna do the to go down to Florida to see Dr. Charles. And so before going to Dr. Charles, I was like praying. I was like, well, Lord, if this is the way that you want me to go, let me know when I talk with him and everything. And so I went down. I was praying the entire time. I actually started like a prayer group with like there's people who are just I felt trusted with and was like a safe space. Like, hey, I'm going to have this appointment. I think this is going to be like my final like doctor that I see. And so if you could just pray that align like for everything to align. And so I went to the appointment and and he just simply was like it was like he saw my chart, he knew how many, and he's like, you want to have a baby? Let's give you a baby. And he was like, like pray and ask the Lord to guide my hands, and we're gonna have a baby. So we scheduled the surgery, and I was like, the fact that he didn't bring up hysterectomy, he didn't. He was just like, hey. Let's do this like that. And I was like, okay. So we scheduled it a couple of months out. And so I went down like a week before, and then my husband came down like shortly after, and we did the surgery. After the surgery, he shared with me that because at first he told me we may have to have two surgeries, after the surgery he told me was able to get it all. It was just one surgery, and he shared with me I had 33 fibroids. And I was like, what? Like, oh my goodness. Like, it was like wild. And I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, no wonder everybody was like, saying that. But I was just like, wow, God. And I remember just having a moment where I'm like, you saved my womb. Like, that's like, and he was like, that was more of the bigger cases that he's ever had. And so from there, came back and that was in 2019 I did the surgery. And so I came back here Texas and everything, and also just making sure like my husband and I we were good, because at the same time we have our hopes and we have our dreams when we got married, and now this is like 2 years later, and we're like, okay, now this is a good space and everything. But then we had cracks, right? We just had cracks just with just living life and everything like that, and we had to work through. And so along the way, I was like, okay, I really thought I was going to get pregnant in 2021, didn't get pregnant. And I was like, oh, I was like doing all the thing, ovulation. I think I was kind of driving myself crazy. I was checking everything and everything such as that. And then after 2021, didn't get pregnant, felt very like discouraged, and it was like, man, what is going on? And now we're here in 2025, or where it's 2026, but last year in 2025, well, actually, let me back up. I'm sorry. Back in 2023, yeah, back in 2023, we went to a fertility clinic, and we were like, because I was like, hey, we're trying, nothing's happening. Been reading on the internet, trying to do all the natural things and everything. So let's just check us out. And so we went to a fertility clinic, and I remember when she called and we did all the tests and everything, and my egg count is good, he's good and everything. But what the issue was she shared with me in 2023 was the scar tissue from my fibroids in the womb and everything like that she doesn't feel as though we can bring a child to term. And so she recommends a surrogate, and I was like, and that was just difficult in the sense of, when you always envision yourself being pregnant, you always envision yourself being pregnant, and you envision like and I'm gonna feel my baby kick, I'm gonna have all the things, wear maternity clothes, like all the things that you ever desire. So going through that and trying to wrap your head around like that that might not be my story, right? And do I still want to go through with with it going through a surrogate, right? And even though she said like, we'll use your egg, use your husband's sperm, it'll be your child. It's just that someone will be carrying it. And I was like, okay, I got to think through that and everything. And so prayed about it and so at the time she's like, at the end of the day, you will have to lose weight in order to I guess to do the surgery to remove my ovaries. And I was like, okay. So when I talked to my sister, she was like, at the end of the day, she was like, you don't have to make a decision. Lose the weight, be healthy. And she was like, everything, and then revisit if that's what you want. But at the end of the day, for you to be pregnant, to carry a child, you're gonna have to be healthy. And so she's like, focus on your health. If she's like, don't focus on the end result, focus on your health. And so last year in 2025, I remember like I'm losing weight, I'm working out, I'm doing, eating right and everything such as that. And I remember just asking the Lord, like, Lord, like, I know what the doctor said, and I was like, but I know what you. I was like, I don't. It's hard for me to wrap my head around you saving my womb of 33 fibroids and saying, well, I'm not going to use your womb to carry your child. And I was like, that's a very hard. I can't connect the two. And I was like, but I don't know what to do in order to help my womb, like to help make my womb good, like, healthy wise, right? And so that was in July. And then in August, one of my church members, she came to me and she was like, hey, she was like, I didn't know that was your story. And she was like, here is she was like, I've worked with her before. She's a doula and she helps women who are dealing with infertility get pregnant. And she was like, reach out to her, talk with her. And so I started working with her in October. And so she's gotten me on an anti-inflammatory diet, helping me just understand and just and ask and safe space to ask the questions, right? Because you don't know what questions to ask, but just in our conversation and us just dialogue, and she's like able to just help educate me when it comes to just pregnancy and what your body needs, and everything. So I was like, okay. And so here we are in 2026, and I feel good. I'm losing the weight and everything, and even though I haven't been pregnant as yet and everything, it's just like we're coming to the close to the end of her program, and it has given me like just a renewed faith in it. So that's my story, and so I'm still in the waiting season, but at the same time, I'm hopeful.
Love your story. I would love for you to take us back on the iterations of your journey where you felt your faith wavered. Because you've mentioned a lot of I call them God winks. Like God was seeing over you, speaking to you through, messages you heard on the radio, through Bible verses, through people from
Yeah,
church, through, just the community that's around you. Really
yeah,
share with us how sometimes those God winks help us on the moments, but sometimes they do
yeah.
discourage us in our season of waiting. So I would love for you to talk
Yeah,
about that.
yeah, no, that's a great question. So it's been a roller coaster. It has been some days it's like, yes, Lord, yes. And then some days it's like, Lord, why? Why? Like, why did my name have to be pulled off the hat for this story, right? And so in the process of it, it was days that the winks, God winks is I love God winks because it was a season where I was really like just sad, and I was just like driving and just praying and asking God, like, God, if this isn't your desire for me, take it away. Like, I don't want it. I don't, it's okay. Like, my husband and I, we can just live life. I said, but it's like what is this yearning? Like, why do I have to keep having this yearning? And I remember just continuing to have this conversation with him. And I didn't share it with anyone. Like, and those are the moments where you know it has to be only but God. Because when you're like, I'm just in my internal thoughts of it. And I remember calling one of my church sisters. She was going through a difficult season. And I called her to encourage her, right? And we were close to because we were doing a life group, small group together. We weren't that close to share like my story or my business or anything such as that. It was just like, hey, yeah, we see each other. How was your week? You know, like that kind of thing. And so I called her to just simply encourage her. And I remember at the end, she was like, Shanley, can I say something to you? And I said, yeah, go ahead. And she was like, God wants me to tell you that you're going to be a mother. And I was like, what? And she was like, it's like, huh? And so she was like, oh, okay. And so said, oh my God. And I just started crying. And she was like, Shana-Lee, she was like, I was so nervous to tell you that because I was like, I do not know this girl's story. And he's telling me, he's like, he just keeps telling me that. And I was like, and I told her, I was like, I have been like talking with God internally all week, driving to work, crying out to him, everything. And I say, it's like, this is like one of those like God winks where it's like, it's only but God. And she gave me like an encouragement of like, Shanley, I encourage you to study the women in the Bible that were barren. And she was like, Ruth, she was like, sometimes we don't even think Ruth is barren, but she was married for 10 years and didn't have children. And she's like, God's timing is perfect. And then she gets married and she has a child, right? And so she was like, study the women in the Bible, and even the women that you don't think is barren, just study the women and just do that. And so in the process of me sharing going through studying the women in the Bible, it actually kind of awakened an idea of writing a book of about that and writing a book of just all the various emotions. And I remember even in those moments where I felt doubtful, like those moments where I was just internally just talking with the Lord, or when she told me that, you know, I couldn't carry a child to term with a surrogate. It's like those are the moments that it's like, yeah, like I understand what you're saying, but it's like, is that really like, but at the same time, it's not lining up with what I envision, right? And it's like, and at the same time, making room and giving space for, well, God, what is your will, right? And so when those moments, so that was like one of those like high great moments. But then I remember when I dealt with the surrogate, and afterwards, I was just like, God, like, what is going on, right? And it's like I've done, you know, you always want to go back and think like, are you punishing me for this, or are you like, or what, or you're like, well, God, like, am I being crazy? Because of course you're getting older, and you know you hear all the things about as you get older, and what they deem as, you know, are you still gonna have your children, and you have all those fears too of, as I'm getting older, and you want those children, and it's like, am I going to be around for the children? Am I going to have the energy for the children? And one thing, and so I went through a season where I was silent, and that I was mad at God, actually, because I was like this is legit, like this, like I wasn't even thinking. I was like, God, yes, I still have this desire, but at the same time, I don't know, how is this how is this even part of your plan when this wasn't what I was thinking about? And so I remember when I was mad at God, I just went silent. And in that season, he also was like, I remember going to church and I would cry every worship song, because you sing the worship song talk about how good God is. And I'm like, God, but my heart is broken. And going through that season of it. And then, but what I believe and what I know for sure is that in those moments that we doubt, even along our way with our faith, or when we have those moments that we're just mad at God, he still is there he's still there mending our hearts together, and mending back the broken heart, even when we feel like he's being silent and everything. And one thing that I learned is that that is part of God's love language. And so on the other side of that, he mended my heart and he helped me get through that season. And now it's in a space of okay, Lord, what is your will? I'm believing in your will because it's been too many winks that have been lining up to say, um, I need you to just be prepared and be ready for what I have for you. So yeah.
No, that's good. That's really good because I think that the spirit of surrender is so hard in this
Yeah.
season of waiting. Especially when you see everyone around you
Yes.
getting the thing that you have
Yes.
truly desired. So then
Yes.
it's like, all right, God, yeah, you in my neighborhood, but like, when is it gonna be my turn?
Yes. 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 Yes, I have those moments too, where it's like everybody's getting pregnant, and it's like because when we got married, there was a couple other couples that got married, and everybody's like popping out kids the after the first year, and you're sitting there like, God, like when is it my turn, right? And even that it was very much emotional because now and especially sometimes as women we take on that weight too because it's like he's like, I'm like, I know we desire children and he had his desire. And now it's like, am I quote unquote broken? Is my body broken? And is this what he signed up for? So you have those thoughts. And even though my husband, he didn't say anything to make me feel that way, but it's just you feel that way, right? And then as you see people getting pregnant, and then when you hear of stories of people and they're complaining about being a mom and it's like that's all I want. It's like that's all I want. I'm okay with them waking me up early on a Saturday morning, right? And it's like you having to process that and work through that and ask the Lord like help me even in those like those tough moments of just like when is it going to be my turn? And I have come to the I've come to a space where it's okay to have those moments, and God can handle those moments. And even when you think like, okay, yes, I'm on the surrender boat, you may have a day that it's just a tough day, and it's just that day, and it's okay to just have those days and show up for those days, and then the next day you wake up and you're like, okay, God, I cried it out. I work, doesn't mean it won't happen again. And it doesn't mean that it negates all what you've done either. And so I've learned that as well along in this journey.
Absolutely. I think that that is the part of grieving and this, compounded grief that happens to us when we are in a season of waiting for something that we truly desire. So I would love for you to talk about your book because obviously a lot of the things that you've shared so far probably have inspired you actually
Yeah.
putting pen to paper. So share with us about your book.
Yeah, so it's called Mommy in Waiting, and it's a 40-day devotional book. And it actually talks about the emotional side of waiting. And so it goes through the desire all the way to satisfied, and so I talk about my journey, but at the same time I talk about the women in the Bible that were barren. I talk about that, talk about it from a standpoint of being a wife, and just going through that process to make sure that you guys are good, because in along this journey we had to work on ourselves to get to a place of because it got to a place where we stopped talking about it, right? Because it was like, and so now your mind is going like, well, maybe he's over it, or maybe, and it's like, well, no, let's have the tough conversation and let's talk through it. And we got to a space where it's like, well, I wasn't talking about it because I didn't know if you wanted to talk about it. And so we have those assumptions. And so I talk about it from that standpoint, and then just and then encouragement along the way. But each section is titled by a type of emotion, and then it has questions at the very end of each devotion that makes you just reflect on your feelings. You can say that you're feeling this way. I told the readers in the beginning that you can either read the book all the way through, or if one day you read it all the way through, but then the next day, but it's a day that you are in doubt, go to the doubt section, go to the anger section. And I title it, and I always like to talk about anger because I was actually done with the book. But then when I got the news with the surrogate, I went silent with God because I was like, I'm mad at you, God, right? Because this, like, here I am thinking, yes, we're good. Like, okay, we did the fibroids, I did the natural work, all of these things. I'm doing the checkbox, and here it is. Now I'm faced with this. And so I was done with the book, but then when that happened, um, I was like, I gotta go back and talk about that because I think sometimes we don't necessarily like to talk about that we're mad at God or that we angry. And it's like, no, that's he gave us that emotion and he can handle our emotion with that. And so just having that safe space to have that conversation in my book. And so yeah, so I go through the various emotions and it talks about mommy and waiting. And then I've at the very end, I write letters to the readers to just encourage them, um and or if their journey is to, if the Lord, for whatever reason, he decides it's not, a motherhood is not your, it's not your story, then I write a letter to you as well. So yeah, and then my husband actually put a pen to the paper and wrote a letter to the men. So yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So where can we find your book and pick up a copy?
It's on Amazon. So you can order it off of Amazon, as well as you can do my website, which is mommyandwaiting.com, as well as it's Barnes and Nobles online, as well as Books a Million online, that you can order it.
Perfect. So what other like tools, resources, other books, podcasts that you listened to that really has helped you in this season of waiting?
Yeah, so 12 Ministries is one of the ministries or podcasts that I listen to, as well as when it comes to the various sister-in-laws, of course, and then also just some of the fertility podcasts, because I'm a podcast and I'm a book reader, and so I've read just some books about just natural healing when it comes to infertility as well. So yeah.
Love that. And I would love for you to share more about almost the fertility doula that you've been working with and kind of what your next steps are on your journey. Because I think a lot of people have been in a season of waiting. And, obviously it's always two steps forward, four steps back. But, there are lots of things that we can always do proactively to just be healthy as a whole that I think
Yeah.
that will help our fertility as a whole.
Yeah. So she the first step with her program, she had me do labs, and it was the labs that, the your regular doctor, primary doctor, may not order. And so she had me do that as a base so she can know what my lab work even looked like. But working with her, she has different supplements, but at the same time, it was supplements, and then talking about the anti-inflammatory, because some of my lab work showed inflammatory. So I moved to an anti-inflammatory diet. Also doing some emotional work, in a sense of, let's get into the root of what is going on emotionally, and working through that. And then at the same time, changing out like some of our cookware, to make sure. So we worked through that. We worked through. I'm actually going to start my lock journey like this upcoming week. Yes. So and so we all talk through that, and just like even like just the different like lotions or soaps and things such as that, and just getting more in the natural space of things. And so she has helped me with that, and then just having the safe space of having the education behind it to help, because I'm the type person that once you if you tell me the information and allow me to digest it, then I'm like, okay, I could change certain patterns, right? Versus and so that just having the education piece and being able to talk. Also I forgot about mentioning this one podcast. It's actually done by a Black OBGYN. And it's her name is Dr. Tiffany Woodas. And she has a podcast that I listen to faithfully, because she breaks down pregnancy and helps and especially with Black women, and giving us the education as well. And I would say that when I started listening to her podcast, it has helped me wrap, because a part of me, if I'm being honest, I was also nervous about getting pregnant, because you hear all the stories and everything such as that. And so in listening to her podcast, it has helped me to get more comfortable with just being pregnant, and just understanding what my body is going to go through, and just again being able to receive it, because some of it is like mentally as well as emotionally. And so mentally now I'm in a better place of like, okay, this is how my body's going to change. Okay, this is what I can expect, or somewhat expect, when it comes to pregnancy, because she has other um women on her podcast that talks through like their pregnancy, if it's verse if it's natural or C-section, and then various ways, and then she brings in, of course, her knowledge to it. And so I need to get the name of her podcast, but that is what I would say is it's been really helpful. It has really been helpful. So
Oh, that's good. No, we definitely need that. I think that there is a lot of misinformation about how do you successfully carry a pregnancy after any of the underlying conditions that we experience as Black women, particularly uterine fibroids, because could they come back? Could they grow with the baby? Could that cause a miscarriage? We just don't know, and everybody's body is different. So I'm glad that you shared a lot of the things that you're doing to really help your body not be as inflamed, but also being able to make informed decisions about your body when you have the right information. And your information is coming from trusted sources, from other Black women who have studied and understand how this works for us. So I think that that is key for anybody that's in a season of waiting, is that we want to make sure that you have the right care team around you. And
right,
it's not people who are not listening to you, who are not respecting what's happening to your body, and they keep giving you solutions that is not your goal. Because essentially
right.
that's what has happened in your journey. So I'm excited about the next steps for you. I would love for you to leave our listeners with encouraging words. What encouraging words can you leave with our listeners who are in a season of waiting?
Yeah, I would say don't give up hope. I would say that I totally agree. Get the right people around you, right? And of course you have your family and your friends, and have them like praying for you, encouraging you. But even with the care, right? Because having the right, I changed my OBGYN to again to make sure like it's an alignment. It's an alignment, right? And then having the having the care, but at the same time having the family and friends. So I always want to tell people to don't give up. Continue to pray, or whatever your faith may be, but pray and continue to like trust that however he does it, right? Because there are there's foster and adoption as well. And just know like just get to a space of that surrender. And it is hard. I'm not gonna say that it's easy, but get into a space where you can surrender, and get you the community that you know you can always be vulnerable with, You can trust them, and they're also going to encourage you and pray for you, even when you can't pray for yourself. I'm a firm believer in like sometimes, even when you can't hold your hand up, you got some sisters around you that can help hold your hand up, and I think that's very much important. Is the sisterhood as well as just having the care, having the like people around you to give you the education that you need.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I am so touched and moved about your season of waiting. I'm ready for you to come back and give us a success story when
Yes.
God blesses you, because we know that's going to happen because you've been so resilient in this journey that you've been on. So thank you for coming on the podcast and sharing your incredible story and encouraging our listeners. So where can we stay in contact with you?
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook as well as Instagram and TikTok at Mommy in Waiting 1124. And 1124 is just Mark 1124 if you want to remember. But if you type in Mommy in Waiting, I should start pulling up, and it's Mommy in Waiting 1124.
Love it. Thank you so much, Shana-Lee, for being on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Erica, for having me. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. For show notes, go to sistersinloss.com to stay connected with us and join the Sisters in Loss community and receive my weekly newsletter. Please go to sistersinloss.com/newsletter. That is sistersinloss.com/newsletter. Please rate and review this